Thank you very much, and welcome to the Transport and Place Scrutiny panel for the 7th of October 2025. During the meeting, all participants will be in control of their own microphone, so please ensure that you turn your microphone on when you are speaking and remember to turn it off when you are finished. And all reports that are published as part of the agenda will be considered as read by members of the panel. Published reports will therefore be summarised to allow the panel to focus on questions. We are not yet quora, but we are expecting to be very shortly, so that those members will be joining us. Item 1 is apologies for absence. I've had apologies from Councillor Cathy Dowse and apologies for lateness from Councillor Aidan Smith and Councillor Denise Scott MacDonald. Any others? No, item 2, for urgent business, none has been received, unless anything else. No. Item 3, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Item 4 for minutes. So that due to a clerical error, the minutes were not published on the agenda and will therefore be deferred to the next meeting. So we will move on to item 5, which is the local plan update. And over to Councillor Rahman and yourselves.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just provide a quick overview of the report, really. So just hopefully everyone's had a chance to read it. So thank you, Chair, and thank you, panel, for this opportunity to talk about the upcoming new local plan for our borough, which is superseding the core strategy from 2014, and this will help direct our future growth, housing, employment, and sustainability across the borough. And also, it's important to highlight the draft plan has been ongoing since 2023, and officers have worked tirelessly to incorporate feedback from the 2023 Big Themes consultation, as well as the consultation, the call for sites in 2024, alongside engagement with council officers and elected members. And this, in terms of the public consultation, this is set to happen this autumn-winter period, and the adoption will be expected around 2027. Or the end of 2027, sorry. And just to highlight a few policy kind of focuses, the draft plan is broken up into 8 chapters covering places, housing, economy, town centres, design and heritage, environment, climate emergency, and transport, with 16 strategic objectives guiding development over the next 15 years. And in terms of a call for sites, we submitted, well, there were 141 sites that were submitted via the 2024 call for sites request and assessed for suitability, availability, and achievability. Selected sites were modelled for development capacity and included in the draft plan with tailored policies. So currently we're taking forward 51 of those sites. And just to finish on the whole community engagement, which is a huge part of this. So the 2023 Big Themes was a big part of of putting the consultation together. And the upcoming draft plan consultation will feature webinars, drop-ins, explainer videos, and interactive tools to ensure broad participation. Thank you.
Very nice. Did anyone make other comments? I was all open to questions. Councillor Gardner?
It's only me. And yourself, Chair. So thank you very much. I think we're 2 or 3 months behind the plan. Is that right? So there's been a slight slippage, and we anticipate the final plan being adopted after the local elections. So effectively, the plan would become live in early 2017. Is that right?
I'll just quickly come in, and if I miss anything out, do come. Yeah. So we've had a slight slippage, but the aim was always to kind of launch the consultation around autumn-winter of this year, in the effort to meet the government's hard deadline, which is in the end of 2026, and in the hope that by the summer or the end of 2027 it will be adopted.
So if I can just add to that as well. Yes, we do the first consultation, which will be autumn-winter this year, And then following that, we'll obviously see what responses we get back, and then how we will amend and alter the plan. Then we have to go to a second consultation, which is around the soundness of the plan. So that will be post the election in May 2026. So the earliest that consultation is likely to go out is June 2026. And this is when there becomes no slippage in the time frame. So then once we've gone out to that last consultation, the aim is then we obviously, again, look at what people have said to us and review whether we would amend any sections of the plan. But then the idea is we submit it for examination in public to meet the government's deadline of December 2026. And that's a hard deadline, so we can't extend it after that. If we extend it after that and we haven't submitted, then we're into the new territory of whatever the new local plan rules and regulations are. And also we will also get some kickback in terms of our evidence and how all that is. So this time frame is critical to get to that examination submission date. And then, as you said rightly, there will be an examination in public in 2027, all going well. When we get the inspector's report back, that's when we'll hopefully be in adoption territory, and we can then bring it back to full council. But that won't be till 2027.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. You may have heard this question before. One of the challenges that we have as a borough, that while we are very green, and we're well off generally, particularly in the south of the borough, for open space and biodiversity and so forth, we do have significant areas, especially in the north of the borough, with open space deficiency. So I just wondered, and obviously there's a section on the environment as well as on climate change. So given the extremely ambitious housing targets and therefore population growth, how can we ensure, other than little bits of private greenery everywhere, how can we ensure that we both protect our current green spaces that we have, but also address, which we tried to do in the last local plan, the areas of open space deficiency?
Thank you, Councillor. So there are policies in the plan that address both enhanced provision of green infrastructure and open spaces. So it basically encourages all, where there's new development, to ensure that there is a quantum of open space provided if the development's of a certain size. And we're looking into more detail into that in terms of precisely what quantum should be provided to make sure that when there's if the development's in a deficiency area, it does address that directly on the site. So we have commissioned an open space study to look into both existing open spaces, levels of deficiency, and bring all our data up to date in that regard, so we can be sure that we take an approach that makes sure we do protect what we have, but also provide new spaces so that new residents can access those.
Shall I ask another one, or did you want to?
You go for it, Councillor Gardner.
Sorry. I mentioned, thank you very much for the answer on that. I mentioned obviously the very high housing targets we have. And to what extent do you think that we can differentiate between just chasing numbers and volume, of which I have many in my ward which are sold to overseas investors off plan? Over 50% of private development in my ward is sold to overseas, in the Night Dragon development actually, not GMV. Therefore it's not meeting local need, and to that which is meeting local need, given the current challenges within the housing supply and developers being quite slow to get developments off the ground, and coming back wanting student accommodation and shared use you know, accommodation and so forth, or coming back with less social housing. How can we ensure that we're not just chasing numbers, but we're actually meeting need?
So the first thing in terms of the target, obviously the target's set by the London plan. So we have to conform with the London plan. So we're not able to change the overall target. However, what we can do, and we've been looking carefully at the supply situation, and as you say, the speed at which developments are being built. So the plan will put in place a more stepped housing trajectory, so that in this current difficult period, the target will be lower than the annual London plan target. So hopefully that enables us to get a 5-year supply on a reduced target. And then, as you're aware, we've got lots of brownfield land that in the long term could be delivered for these new homes. So the target and the trajectory basically says that when conditions improve and that land can come forward, and some of it's reliant on infrastructure interventions like the DLR to Thamesmead, for example, then in the long term we do have a deliverable supply. It's just in the short term we're facing these issues, as a lot of other boroughs are. So putting that into the plan itself, and if that gets through the inspector, hopefully that gives us more of a basis to say, okay, we don't need to keep permitting things now that maybe we are having to do under the current plan, because we don't have an effective supply against a flat target, if you like, and it's more of a step target. And on the issue of meeting local needs, we've commissioned a local housing needs assessment to inform the plan. So that will inform several policies around the level of affordable housing that's needed, the mix, so looking at the size of new homes, how many family-sized homes we need, and also we are introducing specific policies around new types of housing like build-to-rent, shed or co-living, and student accommodation, which at the moment we're kind of reliant on what's in the London plan. It's not really tailored to Greenwich. So hopefully our evidence base and those new policies will start to control that a little more and put those in the right locations where they're needed.
Great. Thank you. Just for councillors who've joined us, previous questions have also been around timeline and green space. So that's already been asked about as well. I had two kind of questions. One was about the evidence-based studies you did. Just kind of interested in who did those, or who you commissioned to do those. And the second one was on the call for sites piece. And just generally your own kind of impressions, were you surprised at what you got back from that piece of work, or, I don't know, was it what you expected? Just kind of reflections on that call for sites.
Yeah, so in terms of the evidence base, I don't have a list of the actual consultants, but we did go out to external consultants for those, because they take time and they're big and access lots of data. So if you're interested in any particular ones, I can find who we tendered out to on that one. And then on the second one, the call for sites, I guess I'm never surprised at what people put in as a call for sites for us to consider. We did have circa 140, and we've accepted 51 going forward in terms of trying to meet our housing supply through that. And there are a number of reasons why we discounted the site. So, for example, they might have a designation which is MOL, for example, or on open space, which we're trying to protect. Or they, for example, you know, they may be surrounded by very sensitive historic heritage assets. So one of the sites we discounted by saying, it's not that we think it's inappropriate for you to densify your site, but you need to come back and talk to us in pre-app, because it's such a sensitive site that we need to understand what you can put on there before we put a quantum and number into a site allocation. And then, for example, if they've got an employment of strategic employment, so we would have rejected them on that. But also, one of the government tests is the sites have to be developable but also deliverable. So if somebody's put forward a site and the landowner has absolutely no interest in taking forward that site, it would be difficult for us to include it in our site allocations and then justify it through an examination in public that that site has real prospect of coming forward, because that's also one of the tests that we have to justify through examination in public. So it's not just that actually it's a bit of brownfield land and it can be developed. We need interest from the landowner, and we need plans in place that can demonstrate that, either in the 1 to 5 year period, 6 to 10 year period, or further on, and that relates back to Michael's stepped housing trajectory that he explained before.
Questions from Councillor Smith? Or? Yeah,
Thank you, Chair, and apologies I was late. For the panel, I know we've discussed previously the estate regeneration plan as well. How do you see that document interacting with the local plan? And do you think the approach that the council is planning to have to that estate regeneration, where we will see new units, but potentially not units owned by the council, how has that influenced this plan as well?
So this plan doesn't rule out estate regeneration, it actively supports it. And how we see that working is, obviously we haven't gone round and capacity tested our estates, because that work's been done by our housing colleagues or our regeneration colleagues. But the plan does allow and does accept that housing regeneration of our estates is a good and positive way to get development. I don't know enough about the details that are coming forward in those schemes, but there's nothing in the plan that rules those out, and so they will work hand in hand.
And then, sorry, one last one, Chair. It would be remiss of me not to bring up HMOs, given the amount of discussion we've had on them at full council in these sessions. I think we're all very conscious of the impact that the spread of HMOs are having on families within the borough, on the housing stock. And I know we've had discussions in these sessions and at full council about what the council's looking to include. Are you able to give just a bit more flavour on what you expect to be included? And is there a way to make sure, I think it's probably, there's a lot of important topics in the local plan, but I think it's one where I get lots of feedback from residents on it. And I know the council are looking to do a lot of engagement on it, but I think specific sessions on HMOs would be really appreciated by a lot of residents.
Yeah, and that's something we're more than happy to do, to talk through. If there's a specific policy that's addressing a specific reason, we're more than happy to talk through and go through how that policy would work. There is a HMO policy in the plan, so we are correcting that, because we understand it's a big gap and a big shortcoming, and we understand that it's creating lots of frustrations across the borough, and it's obviously creating frustrations for planning officers as well, who want to be able to manage the type of development that comes forward in the borough. So just on the policy, there's sort of two strands to the policy. The first one is looking at, because part of the local housing market assessment concluded that we needed, there was a demand and a need for 3-bed properties, and that tends to be the type of property that's lost to conversions to HMOs. So the policy looks at protecting a certain size of property, and if it doesn't comply with that, then it probably falls at the first hurdle. So that protects the 3-bed properties in the borough. And then the second strand is looking at those areas where there is a high concentration of HMOs coming forward, so in particular wards. And we have that, the second bit of the policy will then look at those wards and say, if there is a high concentration, then it sets parameters about what you're allowed to do within a street and how many we would accept. So it goes into quite a bit of detail.
And just on that second point, Vicky, is that specific areas which are known to have that high concentration, but I assume that will also be influenced by, you might have an area that doesn't have a high concentration now, but in 3 years' time might have started to have a high concentration. So it won't be fixed areas, it will be more dependent on how planning applications develop.
So whilst in the policy we've named some wards, what we have tried to do is future-proof it. So if the pattern changes in 2 years' time and another ward then becomes very popular, the way we've written the policy is it then allows us to then bring that ward in without it being a named ward. So we did think about potentially how it might change over the 5 years of the plan.
That's great, thank you so much. And then I guess just final question, on your first point around the 3-bedroom properties, is that going to be a similar control as, I think it's Wandsworth have properties under 1,200 square foot, that it's far more difficult for applicants to get conversions on those? Is that the kind of thing that the council's looking at?
Yeah, it works in the same way. So in the current core strategy, we have a policy that works in a similar way, but only is for self-contained, so conversions to self-contained flats. So it will work in the same way as that, but for HMOs.
Any other questions from panel? No? Go for it, guys.
Thank you very much. So, I mean, a huge exercise. So, very thank to officers for the work that you've done on this. I appreciate there are lots of things to balance. And I'm just going to ask a slight, wobbly, because we're coming on to transport in a moment. Clearly, under the London plan, there's a huge shift to an emphasis on cycling, particularly new developments. And just wondered if you could set out how you hope the draft local plan will, obviously individual, we get huge numbers of cycle spaces in each new development and so forth, but the cycling infrastructure isn't necessarily there to support it in the way, say, it is in somewhere like in West Waltham Forest or somewhere. And I just wondered if you could set out how the local plan would intend to, and obviously we're coming on to this in terms of the LIP and so forth, but the local plan taking that sort of 15-year horizon would seek to address ensuring we become a really good cycling borough with the infrastructure and the network to support all the cycles that people will have to have.
Yep, so there is a specific policy about making sure that cycle parking continues to be provided. Again, at the moment we're on the London plan standards, so we want to carry those forward into local standards, and generally strong emphasis on promoting active travel options, including cycling, through the transport chapter. In terms of the infrastructure provision, certainly on site there'll be a strong emphasis in policy to make sure developers provide that infrastructure where it's within their red line boundary. The problem sometimes comes outside of that. Whilst it's kind of difficult in policy terms to force people to provide things off-site, we can obviously look into how planning obligations are collected and spent through the community infrastructure levy, for example, on making sure those tie in with the LIP plans and everything. And I think in the plan we've tried to highlight sort of where some improvements to cycleways and things could be made that are in line with our transport strategy, and we're working with our transport colleagues to make sure those are aligned. So hopefully, yeah, both strands of policy making align in that respect.
Did you want to ask a question, Neil? Yeah, feel free to use the microphone at the end.
Although David already talked about cycling, for cycling and walking, with a huge new development down in Thamesmead, it gives various opportunities, and there'll be certain amounts of funding available. Would you have in there that suitable, and there was a mention of upgrades of cycling infrastructure, this really would need a serious quality cycle route between Thamesmead and Plumstead, Thamesmead and Woolwich for people to get about. And could it be that the walking and cycling routes are all completed by the time the first people move into the properties? Because those people will have lots of cycle spaces in their properties, and they will need routes to get safely in and out and about. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Obviously, the development at Thamesmead has been highlighted as potential new town in the government's recent announcement. So we've obviously been working closely with TfL on different transport options and with our transport colleagues. I think obviously that site is huge and needs fully master planning, and we're working closely with Peabody on their plans. Obviously it's at a very high level at the moment, but these are the sorts of issues we need to delve into. And I suppose the local plan consultation gives an opportunity for people to give that feedback to us and make sure that that's kind of seen as a priority in developing sites like that. And the timely kind of completion of infrastructure is obviously a very difficult question sometimes, because the funding sometimes doesn't come in until you start building. But I'm sure there are rules in place, I think, where you know, you can borrow against potential future SIL receipts, for example, to start delivering earlier. So that's on a big site like that, which is obviously going to take many years to deliver. That can be part of those early conversations about when those things come into place. So hopefully, I mean, if we can have feedback like that into the consultation, it helps us refine that argument in the plan as well, to make sure we hold the development industry to account when they're delivering these sites.
Great, thank you very much. If there are no other questions from the panel, I don't think there's any recommendations to make for this report, other than obviously it'll hopefully go to full council and see what happens the next step, unless any other one wants to make any. No? Okay, thank you very much for coming. So we will move on to item 6, which is the local implementation plan, LIP and funding item. So
Hi everyone. I'll just do a brief introduction of the paper. So this is just the local implementation plan, which is our funding stream from Transport for London that we get every single year. There's some pots that we apply for, which is discretionary funding, and some that is provided to us based on a formula that TfL use. There is a number of schemes that we deliver. Some is just feasibility potentially, but some is also delivery. It looks at bus priority, cycleways, network development, safer corridors and neighbourhoods, safer streets funding, cycle parking, micromobility, and principal road renewal and bridge strengthening as well. Yeah, and generally it's always linked across to the way we deliver it. We have to link to core measures that we have to deliver under our safe corridors and neighbourhoods, so specific interventions that we have to deliver to be able to get the funding. So there is kind of strict sort of criteria that we have to tick to be able to get the funding that we get. So yes, that's it really.
great, thank you very much, and thank you for the report. I thought it was very interesting, good reading. Open it up to the panel for any questions, if anyone wants to start. Or I have some. Councillor Gardner, you can start.
So first I was going to look this up, but I haven't had a chance. I wondered how our funding for LIP compared to other boroughs, where we are in the ranking compared to other boroughs, because that clearly is quite important and gives us some sort of measure of the level of ambition that we have. I know we've got some major schemes, so it'd just be useful to get that comparison. I note that we had a few lean years really in terms of LIP funding for reasons that we probably appreciate. But hopefully we're now back on track and in the mix in terms of being one of the top boroughs.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I can have a look for you and see a comparison to other boroughs because all the LIP letters are actually publishable on TfL's website, so I can easily do a comparison against what other boroughs have received, bearing in mind that you can receive extra funding throughout a financial year and that won't be publishable on the website. It'll just be the initial allocation that you were given at the very start of the financial year. So you will notice in the paper that we have actually received additional money after the start of the financial year, on specifically like bus priority as an example, where we've got some further funding, which is really good news. We also have a number of schemes in our borough which are outside of local implementation plan funding, like Cycleway 4, which is also TfL-led. We have a bus rapid transit scheme, which is linked to the DLR with Thamesmead and the DLR itself as well. It's partly TfL funded as well. So we have all these other things as well, which has been delivered, not just LIP. So there is quite a lot happening in the borough, that's for sure, and there's a lot of TfL funding going towards Greenwich.
Yep, Councillor.
Thanks. So looking at paragraph 414 and safer corridors and neighbourhoods and reducing traffic, I was reminded today, actually, in fact, by Night Dragon, who I was running down a bit earlier, but they were very good on this point, and I can raise so many examples. A Millennium Way, there's no way that needs to be a dual carriageway. It could easily be a single carriageway. They would like that, so it's much easier for people to cross, safer for cyclists and so forth. And Night Dragon would, really like that, as I'm sure local residents were, as that area is built up. But there are so many roads which could be reduced in width in order to encourage the reduction of traffic and make them safer, to widen pavements, because there are so many pavements that don't meet the 2-metre London pavement standard. And we could do with more greenery and so forth, as well as space for cycling. So, but there doesn't seem to be a plan to do this. You can go to Harrow Manor Way. A lot of the roads in Thamesmead need not be dual carriageway. Beresford Street, Plumstead Road, Woolwich High Street need not be dual carriageway, except where there are bus lanes and so forth. Certainly where you cross, it should be narrower. And obviously, there are quite a few other areas as well. And I just wondered whether we've looked holistically at where we can reduce road space and therefore either increase space for active travel or increase greenery and so forth, or indeed space for housing or something in some cases, because we've got far too much tarmac in the borough.
Yeah, so one of the things that we are actually looking to do as an update for our 26-27 LIP application is to update our road safety action plan, because we find that the safer corridors and neighbourhoods primarily should be looking at how we can improve safety. So that could be due to improved crossings, for example, looking at where we can reallocate road space to reduce speeds. And so we are currently working with a company called Sistra, who are helping us develop a road safety action plan update, which is looking at not only the latest data for killed and seriously injured, but also looking at near misses, so where heavy braking could occur and that sort of thing. And this is quite innovative, but it could actually then help us predict where the next KSI could be, so that we are looking to put that down as potential options for future LIP funding. It's important that we have this sort of methodical way of looking at things, so that we are focusing on the areas with the most need based on the data that we have.
One more, and then over to other members. Bus priority. This is very much an issue in Charlton and Peninsula. I'm sure it is in many other, I know in Eltham it is as well. Bus times, despite some gains in bus times through the neighbourhood management scheme overall, which is good, there are still very, very long bus times, particularly to get to North Greenwich or from North Greenwich. All sorts of reasons for that. But there are significant opportunities also for maybe part-time bus lanes on places like Bugsby's Way, not all the time, but part-time, like when the traffic clogs up on a Saturday before Christmas or when there's a football match or something, so buses can get through then. And I don't know whether we've looked at part-time bus routes, but also a constituent said to me the other day, why couldn't we have a bus gate so buses can get through much quicker on Woods Road as well. And, you know, like we've got bus gates on Kidbrooke Park Road and on Charlton Church Lane. Is there more that we can do? Is there a holistic plan for bus priority and improving bus times? Because if we're going to get effective modal shift, we need that interconnectivity with the faster modes like Tube and Elizabeth Line and the overground, the trains as well, which means people having faster, reliable bus services. But it's having that overall plan to achieve it again. I mean, I've given a few examples, but I'm sure there are many more.
Yeah, no, thank you. So we basically get from TfL every single year a map of the borough that looks at bus journey time reliability, and that enables us to look at sort of pinch points maybe for buses where they're slowing down and not performing reliably. And that's what's informed the schemes that are on the list for the 25-26. So we'll get another iteration of that every year. We also are committing to deliver a bus action plan, and that is not only to look at bus priority measures, but also what we want as a borough in terms of bus services as well, so we can lobby TfL and those people to be able to deliver that. So we're wanting to work with TfL, so we've actually got the data now. We just need to start analysing all the data that we've got to be able to start implementing a bus action plan. And I would suggest that maybe that could be something that we could come back to Transport and Place Scrutiny Committee in the future with.
It's fantastic to see all these cycle routes being revived again that I know we talked about before but not delivered. But I think, as with a previous report you had where I said it's sort of very ambitious, so this funding is all for this financial year, so how confident are you that you'll deliver all of the projects within that time frame?
Yes, it's...
No, because you say in 4.6 about the feasibility, and these could include such issues as feasibility studies, blah, 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 and it talks about possibility of some projects being cancelled. So it's bouncing off the same question of Councillor Smith here, about how confident are you about the ability to deliver them. And I don't remember the last slip in much detail. How much was achieved? Can you compare it like for like? So in terms of success or achievability, I should say, rather than success. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so the funding that we got for the cycling elements as an example, some of those is just for up to consultation stage, so feasibility design is not for the full delivery. We get, for cycling in particular, safer streets as well, we get it in stages. So TfL will give you money in the stages of design that you have, and then delivery funding at the end. So this, if you see the funding that will there, that will be just the funding for that stage of design. And then we have to go back to TfL and beg them to give us a bit more money for the next stage, and that's how it works, basically. And the same for the Safer Streets 20-mile-an-hour scheme programme as well. It's exactly the same. The rest of it is not. So the rest of it, we get the funding as we request of what we want, and then we can deliver. So it does vary. In terms of last year, I don't know if, Ryan, you know, because I wasn't around last year.
Thank you. I don't think there's any new schemes in there, to be honest, because it was the beginning of the cycle. They wanted us to just move on and try to move forward with the feasibility and get to the point of consultation. But obviously that takes resource, takes time. And I know the most recent one was the interim connection we consulted on. The next ones that we'll probably look to consult on would be Shooters Hill to Greenwich and Eltham. They're probably the ones at the next phase. And a couple of new ones have come in this year, like Cycleway 64, which is down in West Greenwich, on the edge of West Greenwich. So every year, you know, we get a couple underneath, but we have been focusing on the strategic cycle network. That's what we had in our transport strategy and our active travel plan as well. And as you probably would have seen from the scrutiny meetings that I've been at, I haven't really had much of a team, and now we do have a team, and now we are, as Alex has mentioned, we're looking at the Road Safety Action Plan, because it's already been like 3-4 years since we adopted the transport strategy and the action plans. And we are also looking at the rest of the borough in terms of cycle routes and what can be delivered. So at some point, you know, we may well tackle Millennium Way and Bugsby's Way, but we have to try and use the funding and the resources that are available to us. So I think the relationship we've got with Transport for London is really good. We have regular meetings with them to show them progress and updates, and effectively it's what scheme can be shovel ready first that they'll be able to invest in.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. It is really interesting to read and really positive. One of the main questions I had is there's a big focus, obviously, on active travel, but it's very tailored towards cycling and public transport. But I think another equally important strand is getting people out and walking. And I don't think this entirely falls to yourselves, but I think some of the issues you can find in the borough are just that the public realm is not built in a way that is attractive for people to go out and walk. Eltham High Street, I think, has potential to really encourage people, but I think some of the stuff that has been done and some of the furniture and the state it's in, actually, just by appearance, is discouraging to people to go out and walk. And one of the other issues, less focused on major areas where people may walk, but we continue to see bollards and other various pieces pop up across bits of the borough where it does just put some people off, and it does make it more difficult for people who do have issues with walking and to actually get around. And so I was just wondering, is there a conscious effort within the council to declutter to some degree to help encourage that use of the public realm? And is there a way for us to get a better overview of that within stuff like the implementation plan and other updates too?
So it's been an issue that it has been going on for many, many years, and always been policy changes. Streetscape guidance was released by TfL to remove all guard railing. You know, every single road in the borough is inspected by a highways officer carrying out cyclical inspections, and their main job is to keep the surface safe to prevent incidents. And part of their job is to try and declutter, but in some circumstances where we do get regular damage of footway materials for people overriding the curb or heavy vehicles riding on a consistent damage, and the fact that there are parts of the borough that are quite heavily resistant to the use of tarmac and prefer to use flag concrete pavers, there are instances that street furniture is required to prevent that from happening. But we do regularly workshops with officers to do regimes of decluttering. But we also have to be mindful that coming forward as well, we've got electric vehicle charging points in the borough that use either lamp columns or bollard charging. And part of that, I think Alex knows more about this than me, but where there are insufficient space on the footway, then there will have to be potential build-outs or tapping into existing infrastructure. One of the companies, as part of the decision, actually used advertising boards for charging to try to find innovative ways. So it is definitely a message. You know, it's years and years and years of practices that have been embedded in the council that over time has to be undone. In regards to, you was alluding to earlier, that TfL funding, a lot of it has been focused towards cycling as part of the active travel. We actually got an invite tomorrow to TfL and GLA doing a presentation on an upcoming walking plan, that action plan that they want to start lifting off. And we do have accessibility funding as well to ensure that there's tactile crossings available at every junction, bus stop accessibility to make sure curb heights are at sufficient height for people to access public transport whilst they're walking as well. So it's I would say it needs to be dealt with as business as usual. There's still a long way to go. Yeah, I'll leave it there. I hope that's answered. most of your
No,
questions.
it does. And as someone who lives next to a junction where that tactile paving's been installed, I think that's a really good idea and good way to move forward with it. One other question I had was just on accessibility, and a different angle of it is, I had a resident raise with me recently about the lack of, at some of the bus stops on Eltham High Street, the lack of the sort of live bus times and timetables, and the fact that that actually really impacts her day. She doesn't have a phone where she uses the internet, she's an elderly resident, and actually the bus stops where it does have it is really useful, but there is one particular bus stop that is frequently used on the high street that doesn't have it. And I guess I'm happy to write the details, but it's just a plea to look at that as an area of accessibility too, and just making sure that we're giving residents the information they need as well to use active transport too.
I was pleased to see that we're going to increase 20-mile-an-hour zones. Does that include on main roads? Because it says that, what is it, 73.4% of our KSIs are on main roads. So I wondered if you could tell us which ones we're going to put them on.
Yeah, so as you know, we delivered zones previously, and as part of the recent bid to Transport for London, there was funding available for a larger amount of money to deliver more. Within the transport strategy and the road safety plan, there has been an ambition to be borough-wide 20. So the exercise that we're doing at the moment is to undertake the feasibility study to understand how we can make that happen. The likelihood would be that we would implement a blanket 20 on roads in the first year, and we would monitor how that's impacted in terms of the 85th percentile speeds, the incidents, to understand if there are physical infrastructures that would need to go in on certain roads, but that will include main roads. We will be going to consultation, but it's the funding come relatively late, not late in the year, but a few months after the usual submission when we get that. Numerous conversations with TfL, and we've brought the resource in to develop that proposal, but we will go out to consult as a statutory consultation as opposed to public consultation. But it will be dynamic. You know, it will be blanket, we review, there may well need to be physical interventions at certain points. And obviously the existing infrastructure in the zones will remain for the foreseeable until they become a maintenance issue. So, yeah.
Following up on that, the sort of police seem to be either unwilling or unable to effectively enforce speed. So, for example, they are incredibly reluctant to put in any speed cameras. I don't know if that's to do with the financing, where the fines go, or what the deal is. But if we've got a main road, so for example, Millennium Way, say if there was lots of speeding there, what physically could we put in? I know there's like speed tables on crossings, but what could we really do to actually stop that?
So as a borough, we don't have the power to enforce. It is still with the police. There was supposed to be a trial that we were going to hear findings from, where a borough was trialling its own enforcement to move that power away from the police. There has been no update on that. So other than physical measures, other than community road watch and the police going out with physical guns and issuing tickets and speeding fines, there isn't much in the way other than physical infrastructure, which in some areas isn't viable because of the type of transport and the buses as well. So it is a very difficult area for us to manage. But there is evidence out there and studies out there that do, you know, you'll always get anomalies, but the behaviour in these areas does tend to shift, and I think Woolwich Common is a very good example of that. I know there's a speed camera, and I know it is a TLRN route, but people do tend to stick to, or thereabouts, to the limit.
Thank you. Just if I might stray into Councillor Smith's ward, if that's all right. There's been a very long-term ambition. I thought there was funding a few years back, and I'm not sure what's happened to the pedestrianisation of Greenwich Town Centre, particularly College Approach and parts of King William Walk. I mean, as you, and I've been to most British, heritage, World Heritage Site cities, been to many, across Europe, and nearly all work wonderfully as pedestrianised, but we are behind the curve here, and it's, people are, you get, thousands and thousands of people in this area every day, and with very, very narrow pavements, and buses and so forth, and vehicles turning around, often very busy. What's happened to this plan? And when it's not in here, so when would you expect it to be implemented, and did we make a bid for it this year?
Yeah, so it is in there. It's the Greenwich Liverpool Neighbourhood Scheme. So we got £300,000 this year for to progress it. So we get it in stages. So it's similar to the cycleways. We're in feasibility stage. It's been in traffic modelling for a very long time, possibly over a year, I would think now. And it still looks like the traffic modelling's not going to finish till spring next year. It's a very complex project where pedestrianising the Greenwich Town Centre means also relocating bus services, for example, looking at how junctions will operate, putting in new pedestrian crossings, understanding how cyclists will react to new road layouts. It's a very, very complex project. Got taxis, obviously, coaches, all in the mix. So it's an extremely, extremely complicated scheme. I do know there is market engagement with the markets at the moment happening as well to understand their loading and freight requirements as well. So it is progressing. I would say it is unlikely that you're going to see changes anytime soon because it is a very long, complex project.
But we should see some changes on the interim cycle scheme.
Correct. Yeah, so the interim cycle scheme will provide changes on College Way. So you will see, hopefully, a segregated cycling infrastructure put in there and some pedestrian improvements as well.
Yeah, wider pavements on the market side. So, yeah.
Okay, I've also got two general questions. One, on the sort of schemes you're applying for, there seems to be quite a big focus on both schools and cycling. And just wondering if you could reflect a bit on that, whether that's something that you saw there was a need for, or a lack of, or particularly wanted to focus on for this round. And then the second is just in terms of your sort of transport funding in general, as kind of a rough proportion, maybe how much does LIP funding, what kind of proportion is LIP funding in terms of your overall? If you're saying, you also mentioned there's other sort of schemes which are separately funded differently, just what is that kind of proportion?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the focus on cycling and schools, we are probably not performing as well on school streets as other boroughs. So that was one key thing that we see as quite a key metric to improve on. And it also shows that improving that improves safety and improves children walking and cycling more to school and those sort of things. Focus on the cycle network development schemes. The delivery of those are high strategic routes, so there are top routes in terms of strategic cycling that we need to deliver. This was just applied for as the very top, I think it was 6 schemes that we've got there, the top 6 sort of cycling schemes that we have in our borough that we need to deliver to be able to achieve the 2041 target that we need to achieve for Greenwich. So in terms of mode share, to be 80% of people travelling sustainably. And then finally, in terms of the amount of funding, actually LIP is probably on the smaller end, actually, if you're talking about overall amount of funding, because to give you an example, we've got Bus Rapid Transit Scheme, and just that alone, which is linked partly to the DLR, that's £23 million scheme, to give you an example. So this is much smaller scale interventions. A lot of the schemes that are on here more localised. Greenwich Liverpool Neighbourhood, though, is a large scheme, but we get that in stages, as I was saying before. So yeah, but most of them are very small scale schemes that we're delivering here.
I saw we didn't get any funding for micro-mobility, but I wondered how the new deal with Lime is working and if there's any prospect of expanding sort of Lime beyond Charlton, like ideally to Woolwich Town Hall at least.
So we're currently going to be delivering sort of the dockless bike bays in the near future. There'll be 55 bays initially going out in sort of the West Greenwich area, East Greenwich area, North Greenwich area. It'll be put in under an experimental traffic order. So that means there'll be a 6-month consultation phase that we assess how it's performing with Lime. We assess how it's working with our residents. And after that period, then we can look to extend if it's successful. So that's the reason why we're doing it under a trial, to see how effective it is. Because if we're still getting issues with the suppliers, then we might have to rethink how we operate in the borough and how they operate in the borough.
Do you want to come? Neil?
I've got a list. Okay, good. Thanks for what you do, because building your team has given you an awful lot more chance of getting all these things done, and there's a lot going on. The micro-mobility, obviously, we didn't get any money, we didn't put in for any money on that, but surely ahead we'll be looking to increase. The route on King William Walk is a one-way, and Greenwich Park are always complaining about cycles entering the park from the wrong angles. Could we not get a contraflow in there? Because I know it's a part of the livable neighbourhood, but you know, we've waited since 2019, we've been saying about that. So is there a chance of just doing that one contraflow as a possibility? You've got money in for school travel, sustainable travel to school, but I've never seen any targets of what we're intending to do, how we're doing with those, and if we're putting money into sustainable school travel, surely we should have some targets of where we are at the moment and where we're expecting to get to. And I'd like to see data on that, please, so that we know what we're doing and we can target specific areas, schools or clusters of schools to get in the sustainable travel we need. So I don't know which of the budget areas that come under, but it's something I'd like to see. Plumstead Road between Woolwich and Plumstead, you've got a single carriageway for Plumstead High Street, and then you've got single carriageway from the ferry up towards Greenwich. So we've still got 2 carriageways outside Woolwich, which was mentioned earlier on, and that really seems as though it's unnecessary to have 2 carriageways in the middle of 2 singles. So that might be an opportunity to improve the crossings in Woolwich. Yeah.
Pick one more, Neil. One more.
Right. I don't know.
Okay, so maybe, yeah.
Just one question. Where does the CPZ funding come from?
So that is capital funding.
So that's not
external, not TfL funding, yeah.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, if you want to take those questions as a group.
So for King William Walk, I'm happy to take that away and see how we can maybe integrate that as a separate item away from the livable neighbourhood. It is currently in a livable neighbourhood scheme. That's why it hasn't been delivered, because it's all stuck with all this traffic modelling and all this sort of thing. But I agree with you that that could potentially be a discrete thing that maybe we could look to deliver outside of that. So I'll take that away to have a look at. I'll take the Plumstead Road one as well. So that is part of Cycleway 4, the next future section, which did go out to public consultation, I believe, a while ago. There is improvements along there on sections of it from Woolwich Ferry to look at putting bus lane improvements, but equally by Woolwich Station is going to be improved crossing on the eastern arm as well, where currently there's a lot of people crossing informally, as well as a two-way cycle track that will reduce the carriageway widths down. So I do think we'll see improvements really along that corridor for walking and cycling and safety. I don't know if you want to take the school travel planning one.
Yeah, I'll have to get the exact data, but on the STARS travel programme, the aim is, no, not anymore, but the old name is ultimately to have as many gold schools. I will have to rack my brain to find if there's a target, but every year, annually, we review that. I think there was a council question that you raised that we answered, but you don't like the answer. So I will, yeah, if I can get the information for you for tomorrow, I'll try and get hold of something to support that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. There is an interim cabinet member, so I don't know what, maybe invite you forward to give any comments you want to before we close this item.
Thank you very much, Chair and colleagues. And thank you very much to Ryan and Alex for their presentation. And I think for doing well with your questions. And I think we've got an hour tomorrow, Neil, which I'll be joining as well, so we can go through some more of that then. Just a couple of reflections on some things that I've said. I think Greenwich Town Centre, David, also touches on my ward. About a third of it is in my ward. I think it's been striking the 3-4 weeks I've been in post, just quite how much is going on, and I think the work that has been done over the past years to build up a team is really coming together now. I think there is a fantastic team who are delivering some really impressive work very effectively. And the number of briefings I've had show just how much work is being done on a whole range of projects and improvements that we'll hopefully see to come to fruition relatively soon. And so I think the work of this committee has been really important in helping to shape some of that as well. And that's not just because I've been a member of the committee, so I'm not trying to pat myself on the back there, but I'm trying to pat you all on the back there. I think we can be really proud of what we are achieving as a borough here, and I think we're getting much smarter and more effective in how we leverage some of the kind of TfL investment to deliver not just transport but also wider benefits. And I think, Councillor Smith touched on part of the Cycleway 4 connection. I think that's a good example of that, where we're also leveraging that to deliver entirely new play area and do some estate regeneration as part of being able to also get through some kind of quiet way infrastructure. And I think that again is testament to the work of the team who went away, took feedback from councillors and came back with kind of a real plan there that they'd engage with TfL and won that argument with. And I think we'll see a lot more of that kind of thing now that we've got that strong team in place. But yeah, thank you very much.
That's great, thank you. Any recommendations anyone particularly wants to make? Yes, Councillor.
Thanks. It's just quite a generic one, really, which is that we recommend that the cabinet member and team come back with a plan for future for the next LIP bid, which I'm not sure quite when that will be. Whether this is a 3-year, it's just 1 year, isn't it? 1 year. So that we can sort of look at it, interrogate it, obviously against our agreed transport strategy and plan, And also bear in mind the comments in terms of reallocating road space for active travel where feasible, and obviously improving bus times and bus priority measures. Yeah.
I mean, it'd be good to have a progress report of the different schemes.
Yeah.
Your mic wasn't on. But we got you what you were saying. The bid is being progressed at the moment. Officers and Warren's chasing everybody sitting behind us who wrote the report but doesn't want to talk tonight. He's doing all the work. So whether the timing works out that we can share it to be scrutinised, or attend a meeting, I'm happy to share it, what we've got proposed for comment. But I don't think the timing is going to work out for us to come back here, because I think we're back in November for flood risk, and then we're back in January for highways maintenance. So
I think there's a final panel. Is about kind of reflections on for the 4 years. So maybe we could bring it as part of that or something. But good idea. Any other recommendations people think? No, I think take away to add on maybe in the future work programs, the bus action plan, and kind of what you said. I think that'd be kind of good, and road safety plans would be good ideas to look at in the future. Okay, in that case, we're going to close that item, and thank you very much. So item 7. So this is not on the agenda, but just is to let you know, is the commissioning of future reports. So the next meeting will be on the 13th of November, and it will be on a state regeneration policy and implementation, and on flood risk strategy and water management plan, surface water management plan. But great. Thank you very much, everybody. Closed.